Brought to you by JMR Rentals, professional digital cinema and broadcast equipment rentals in Brooklyn, New York. JMRNY.com. And now get 15% off your first rental when you use the promo code WEEKEND. Call 347-721-3400 or email info@jmrny.com for details. Hello and welcome to No Rest for the Weekend, where we go behind the scenes and talk to the creators of independent entertainment. I'm Jason Godbey, and today on the program, we're talking about working with actors. I spoke a little bit about this in our no-budget filmmaking episode, but today we're going to do a bit of a deep dive on that subject. And to help me do that, joining me via Zoom, she is an accomplished actor and the star of our film Sonnet 23, Miss Emmeline Prior. Welcome, Emmeline.
Hello, hello. Thank you very much for having me.
It's good to see you.
Nice to see you too.
We see each other via Zoom most of the time, but we did get to work together on a couple of projects, which is cool. So I want to talk about, kind of how we work together and, the experience that you had and kind of what it's like to work together on these small projects and how they can be of use to both the filmmaker and the actor. But first, I want to talk to you about you and just give me a little bit about your background. How did you get into the old show business, and what is your origin story?
How did I get into the business of show? Well, I am not from the American shores, as I expect you can hear. I grew up in Cornwall, England. And, I had parents that loved theatre and a family that was really into the arts and all that kind of thing. And like a lot of people, before I came to making film and TV and that kind of thing, started in theatre from a young kid, anything, school productions, church productions. Then when I was at college, it was all, being part of the theatre group at college and that kind of thing. And I went to the University of Leeds, and they actually had a very kind of strong theatre department. And then as I was finishing my college course, then it was kind of, is this a thing? This playing games, could I actually do this for a living? Is this something I could do as a career? So having done already a university course for 4 years, I then went to London town and I trained to be a professional actor. So my background in the UK was mostly in theatre, although I did do a little bit of TV and short films and things, but I did mostly theatre.
So now you're here in the USA. You've been here for a little while.
I have.
We first met last year, the worst year to meet anybody.
Yes.
And we did a pilot together. We did a project called BTRP TV. That project is in film festival consideration right now, so I can't talk too much about it. We did go to One Fest in Catskill. Film did really well. We won an award. That was awesome. I think it was cool and it worked out. And I really like working with you. So I think we had like coffee or something, and we talked about you had a Shakespeare background and had done theater in England. And I think that stuck somewhere to the back of my psyche when I came up with this idea, which was based on the Sonnet Slam, the Shakespeare's Birthday Sonnet Slam that happens every year. I thought about making a film for it, and then I realized that we were never going to hit that deadline. But we found that sonnet, and then I told you about it. And I just like, from your point of view, what was that like initial discussion like? What was your initial impression of the project?
I can't remember exactly. You contacted me about working on some projects after we'd already done the first project together, and I'd had a great time, and I was like, okay, yeah, great, I'm up for whatever. And then I think you said Shakespeare, and I was like, yes, Shakespeare, I just, anything to do with Shakespeare, that's my background. I'm a teaching artist at Shakespeare's Globe Theatre in London. I was before the pandemic. I do storytelling at Shakespeare's Globe, and I've just done so much Shakespeare. So Shakespeare is the gift that keeps on giving. You can never get bored of it. I could do Shakespeare for my entire life and just still love doing it. So just the fact that you said it was going to be Shakespeare, the fact that we'd already worked together, I really wanted to do it straight away. But I was very interested in the format it was going to be, because even though I am experienced in Shakespeare, I don't know that I've ever done any on film actually until I worked with you. So it was kind of mixing, my theatre life and that genre with, camera work, which I'm actually more new to. I've done a lot of camera work, but that's only really been over the last couple of years. So it's interesting mixing the two.
Initial discussion were kind of like, I think the hardest thing was interpreting a sonnet and trying to dramatize it and make it a story,
Yeah.
and I realized right away that I couldn't take it literally. Like I couldn't just come up with literal images of an imperfect actor on the stage, and because we've all seen bad Shakespeare, you know,
Yes.
and I didn't want it to do that, so we kind of came up with this. I came up with this sort of this story of a very kind of simple story structure, and I was thinking about, as I said in the no budget filmmaking episode, this way that we could do it and kind of shoot it in a day and not kill ourselves, but make it look good, and but I knew that if I'm only going to have one actor in the piece, the acting's got to be strong, like,
Oh.
and I didn't know that many people who could kind of fit what I was looking for in the
Mm-hmm.
character. And I had this idea of her being like Helena Bonham Carter esque, like dressing sort of like a barmy crazy lady from England,
Yes.
and having her be quite eccentric. And the whole kind of image of it sort of just kind of came to me. And then I
Yes.
thought, who do I know who could do that? I wasn't like profiling you based on the fact that you're British. I was like, well, she's English. She could do Shakespeare. Talk a little bit about like how we kind of came up with a character, and like what the exchange that we had.
Sure. Well, I do remember the Helena Bonham Carter reference. And, obviously she's just a wonderful, fantastic actress, rather eccentric sometimes in her appearance and so on. And I do remember you saying, like, you asking me to send you some wardrobe choices. And you said something about, the clothes she wears are a bit crazy. And I sent you a few pictures, and I think you texted back something like, not that crazy. Because a couple of them I did look a little bit like, it was too much. But that was probably my theatre background, where I went a little bit, I thought I was still within the realms of something, a bit eccentric, but actually I'd gone completely, too far. But that was fun. Just like, honestly, just looking at the costumes and working out that she was going to be a little bit quirky was really fun. I do remember the actual creating the character to me actually wasn't difficult, because eccentric English woman isn't 100% 100% of a stretch for me. But I do remember what was quite difficult is, we did a few rehearsals, didn't we? And I had the kind of rhythm of the poem sort of entrenched, really. And it was hard for me, because the rhythm of the poem wasn't actually what you wanted for this piece, which I totally understand. But as someone with a background in Shakespeare, and, having taught iambic pentameter at Shakespeare's Globe, and that has a very specific rhythm, and it's a very, it's a very clear, particular way that it's done. I remember we did do a few reads where I kept reading it like a poem, rather than it being a living piece. And obviously you wanted it to be a living piece of this slightly eccentric lady trying to eat a sandwich and getting a bit stressed. And in the end, I think it did really work, but I had to get out of that. I was trying to read it like, this is me reading a very serious piece of poetry.
The thing about sort of reinterpreting something like that is there is it's been around for like 400 plus years, and sonnets in particularly are a very strong structure of poem. We wanted it to be kind of like a stream of consciousness, like
Yes.
this is what she was thinking. And I remember we had come up with the idea of like it being a mantra for her.
Yes.
Like the first few lines when she's standing there trying to calm herself down, it's like somebody, maybe a shrink gave her this as an instructional thing. It's like when
Yes.
you're feeling stressed, you just recite this poem in your head.
Yeah.
And then we kind of turned it in from that into a thought process where it became a recited mantra, then it became a stream of consciousness, and then finally it becomes a communication in her answer to the
Yes.
guy who's texting her. For you, I don't know if it was this your first experience doing. I know you've done voice work, but is this your first experience doing ADR that we had to do, and doing voiceover type
Yes.
narration? Because I told
Yes, it was.
the process was like, because we did what I call the scratch track, which is where you just kind of did it and we kind of experimented. But I said, no, we're gonna have to do it again where you watch the film and then you're going to have to recapture that performance in the
Yeah.
voiceover, which is not easy. Not all actors can do that.
It was not easy, and you were very, very, very patient with me,
Well, I know
because
how hard it is.
when we were shooting on the day, that last bit where she's sending the message, I was typing into the phone, and in my head, I was saying those words at a kind of regular speed. So when we're doing the ADR, I'm thinking those words must fit my mouth, because I was saying them. I was saying those exact words as I was doing the phone acting. And then on the ADR, I was like, why can't I make this fit? Exactly. It was, it was a really good learning experience.
That in itself, it's the reason why film acting is different than stage acting. As an actor in general, when you're working with a director, do you like rehearsal?
Do I like rehearsal? My goodness, what a loaded question. I mean, everything now is under, the shadow of COVID. So what's happened is I have done, a few bits of film work and stuff where we've had really quite long and extensive rehearsals, but because of COVID, they had to be over Zoom. And, the crews were lovely and the people were lovely and the cast were lovely. For me personally, if I'm going to film something, physically and be on set, I don't need loads and loads and loads of rehearsals over Zoom. When we're on set or when we're on location, it's great to have a rehearsal just to get the movements into your body and to help with the timings and, obviously to camera angles or the more technical side of it. But in terms of like kind of finding the character and that sort of thing, I find just rehearsing over Zoom, like endless rehearsals over Zoom, a bit, for me, not very helpful.
When you're doing a project like this where you don't have a ton of time and you're not spending a ton of money on it, it's one thing. It's like, actors will love to rehearse if you're paying them for 2 weeks of rehearsal. But, when you're doing a project like this and you're trying to shoot everybody out in a day, that doesn't give you the right to spend 2 weeks rehearsing with them. Like, don't do
Yeah.
a project. In my opinion, if you're going to work to be respectful of, I think the first thing of making a no budget production is be respectful of everybody's time, especially
I
the
agree.
actors, because they have other things to do, and hopefully they're auditioning for other projects. And if they're working with you, they're not auditioning for other projects that they could possibly get paid for. So you have to make sure it's worth it. So like, my rules are like, don't shoot more than a day or two. Make sure you get people's stuff back in a reasonable amount of time. Don't hold on to a project for 5 years because that's what they're doing it for. They're doing it for the reel. So make sure that
Yeah.
you can, give them something solid for a reel. Is there something that you found that, works for you as far as working with a director and that you want from a director?
I think your point about not making the actors work ridiculous amount of hours unless you're paying them for ridiculous amount of hours is very important. There was a point where I was feeling that the less a job was paid, the more out it was sort of exponential. The more hours you were expected to work, the smaller the project. um,
Well, is there something that, like, in terms of working with a director, like, I mean, I saw an interview with Anthony Hopkins
mm,
years ago, and I think he was doing Titus Andronicus at the movie he was doing the movie of Titus, and they said, "What do you want from a director?" And he said, "I want someone to look at my performance and say faster or slower." Like, like
yes,
he said, he's like, like, and for me, if I do 20 takes, it's not going to get better, it's going to get worse.
yes,
So, if we can't get it in 5 takes, we're doing something wrong. Now, he's never worked with Stanley Kubrick, who did, 15 to 25 takes
yeah, yeah,
routinely, or David Fincher, who, does that. I don't really believe in doing that, but everybody's different. Also, I'm not making David Fincher money, so maybe if I am one day, I can, I'll make somebody do 20 takes. But,
yeah.
is it, in terms of that, like in terms of like the physical, like working and the working relationship, like
Yeah.
what's been beneficial and what's maybe been not beneficial, I guess is the
I
question.
mean, in terms of practical stuff, in terms of an actor's time, an actor's expertise, and an actor's energy, if you are working on a low budget or no budget production, it's making the actor feel valued, offering them something like you do your wonderful headshots, and and just being reasonable with what you ask of the actor. I mean, I did do a little thing for a lady that was a sort of animation, and it was a very, it was no money, which was fine. but I was just called for so many rehearsals, and I'd found one or two ways of doing the voice in a way that the lady liked. And I thought, surely the rehearsals are finished now. And then I think I got another link to another rehearsal, for like a 20-second script. And I was asked, do you want to rehearse this time and go through it all again, improvising the script? And I just said, no, because it gets to a point where, the person was very nice and quite young in the industry. So maybe that's just their lack of understanding that this is my profession, this is what I do for a living. And after my fourth or fifth rehearsal, when I've already given you perfect versions that you already like, I'm not gonna, why would I want to spend an hour of my life improvising? I just don't have time for it in the nicest possible way. On a more practical level on set, I'm totally with Anthony Hopkins, really just any directions that are just easy to follow, clear. Of course, because sometimes the director has a very, very clear idea, but doesn't necessarily vocalize it very clearly. And a director saying, Emmeline, please do that faster, that's a direction I can act on very easily. If a director says, what I was really going for is she's longing for this, but she was hoping for that. And then when she was remembering what happened to her brother 5 years ago, and then this is what that, I'm not saying that's not a valid opinion from the director, but it's not something the actor can easily put into practice. And it doesn't matter whether you're a famous actor, whether you're an amateur actor, whether you're Anthony Hopkins, whether you're rich and famous, if a director gives you a direction that's just easy to act on straight away, that just makes the whole process so much quicker.
One of the things that an actor taught me was you can only play an action. You can't play emotion, you can't play a mood. You have to give them something to do. Like you have
Mm-hmm.
to give them something solid that's like, okay, this is what your action is, and then you can interpret that action, and the hopefully the emotion part of it will come out naturally, so that
Mm.
like you have you like say you're doing something, say you're really angry at somebody, and you want to leave you want to leave your boyfriend or whatever, and you're packing a suitcase. People have done that, but the action of packing the suitcase will get all the receiving end of your anger. And you could
Yes.
play that for comedy, you could play that for drama. There's different ways that you can play it, but the doing that action and doing those different things, first of all, it makes it much more realistic, because in
Yep.
real life, most people just don't stand and scream at each other,
Yeah.
and it's also just more interesting visually. It's like we're
Yeah.
working in a visual medium, and you want to give something to do. And for this film, we had you work with props a bit, which is
Yep.
a pain. And I always tell people, don't put too many props in something. Or if you're an actor and you're going to work with props, rehearse with them before, so that you don't get all messed up on the day trying, like, because it's a juggling act. Like this,
Yes.
for this one, you had the sandwich, you had the bag, you had a phone, you had a book, you had all this different
It
business
was
going
quite
on.
proppy.
But like, it all worked because
Yeah.
we planned it out, and you knew kind of, and by the time we got on set, I don't think you had any problem of like, oh no, I should be picking up the book now, or I got the thing, it's like, but the action of like, just simple action of her trying to eat a sandwich, and
Yes.
and then looking back, like, that's where the joke comes from.
Yeah.
And if you were just sitting there thinking to yourself, it would give you a lot less motivation and give you a lot less to do, and
Yeah.
be a lot less interesting. So
Yeah.
like, I for me working with actors, I always tell people, just give someone a solid action that they can play, and make sure
Yeah.
they have stuff to do, that they can channel their energy into.
I mean, I do agree, like, that giving someone a very simple and clear action is very helpful. I'm not an actor. I don't mind being given an emotion, actually. I know some actors don't like it, but I don't mind at all a director saying to me, happier, sadder, angrier. For me, I don't mind that. It's my job. If the director thinks I need to look more angry, I'll look more angry. What I don't like is sometimes the director is giving me a long explanation of why or who or what she's thinking, and then you kind of, your brain turns off halfway through the explanation. Whereas if the director had just said to me, can you really bang that table with your fist, or can you be more angry, I find just anything that's an easy direction to act on.
Yeah, I think the thing that I find a lot of let's say lesser experienced directors,
Mm.
you talk too much, and you say too much in general because you're trying to give this grand reason for something that may not exist.
Yes.
You're trying to apply meaning. Often, when you're a young writer director, your material
Yeah.
sucks, and you're trying to make it better than the material you wrote, and it probably should have been cooked longer. Like you should spend more time on the script. In general, I found that when I was a young director, I talked a lot, and I was always like blah 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 blah. And now it's like, how much did I actually talk to you when we were filming?
Oh, yeah, not a great deal, but that's
Yeah,
good.
yeah. So like, because I didn't have to, like we knew we had done a little bit of rehearsal. You knew what you were doing. So by the time we got there on the day,
Yeah.
and we're still in locations and stuff too. Like we don't have hours and hours to spend on these places. So like you just like, all right, she knows what to do. Just let her do it.
Yeah.
And a lot of times the hard part is just shutting up and getting out of the way.
I totally agree. I mean, once the actor is the last, in a way, the actor's just got to turn up and do their job. And as long as the director communicates on the day clearly what they want, you know, there's I have a casting director friend. I'm trying to remember what he says, that the 4 Bs or the 5 Bs. Is this an American thing? It's be on time, be good, be something, be gone. And I'm like, yeah, that's just it for an actor. I can't remember the exact phrasing, but it's, be on time, be good, be gone were the 3 big ones anyway.
This is Spencer Tracy, who has had two Oscars in a row. He said, show up on time, don't trip over the furniture, and know your lines.
Yes.
Like
We have a slight alteration of that in England. We say face front and don't bump into the furniture for theatre. When people start going off about how one has to find the character and how one has to be true to the moment and how one has to do this and how to do that. And the answer is, no, laddie, you must just face front and don't bump into the furniture.
my favorite was Laurence Olivier talking to Dustin Hoffman in Marathon Man. This is a famous story about Dustin Hoffman, who had spent his character was supposed to have been up all night long. So before the shoot, he stayed up all night long. So he would look harried and tired. Laurence Olivier, sir, I think he was Lord Olivier at that point, looked at Mr. Hoffman and said, "What have you done to yourself or something?" And he went and he explained what he had done. And finally, he just said, "Why don't you just try acting?" Like,
that is actually a very famous story in Britain too. Yeah.
and half the time, like especially like if you're doing a no budget production, like I said, keep it simple. Like you
Mm.
should not have to give a dissertation for a movie that's 5 minutes or less. Like you should not have to, like
Yes.
it's not, you're not directing like Ethan Frome or like some,
Yeah.
it's not Jane Austen or Jane Eyre or any of that stuff. Like you're not going into this. And, even with Shakespeare, I think part of the thing is that people just get so wrapped up in their head.
Yeah.
And they, it's like this analysis paralysis thing that happens, where,
Yes.
it's like really just, say, I mean, I found Shakespeare when I did it years ago, like if you say it like you mean it, that's all you got to do. It's all in the
Yeah.
words kind of thing. But,
Yeah.
you know, people will beat it to death and kill it before they say it. And then you get really, really boring interpretations of Shakespeare.
Yeah.
We're going to wrap up shortly, but if you have, we're going to look for your upcoming projects and so forth. But if we want to do that, where can we find you on the web, on social media, website, all that stuff?
Well, I'm on Instagram just as Emmeline Prior. And a wonderful man called Peter Spence in Norway is building me a lovely website. He's a web designer and an animator. I've actually done some animation voiceover for him. And he's super wonderful and one of these people that's just brilliant at everything. And he is building me a fantastic website. And it's not quite ready to launch, but it will be very soon. And it will just be emmelineprior.com. I've got a couple of feature films coming out, but I'm not sure when. They're in post-production. New York City is Dead and the Sisters Cardos, and a couple of shorts coming out, one of which I think is coming out very soon, called The Gallerist, directed by Adam Hollebeck, and it's beautiful. It's shot in black and white, and I've only seen the trailer so far, but I'm really excited for it. I think he's managed to get some really, really beautiful footage.
Glad you're busy. I hope you continue to work, even though we're, not quite out of the pandemic yet, and we still have all these precautions and everything that we have to do. But I'm glad that you're doing that. I'm glad that you had a chance to work with me. Loved working with you both
I loved
times,
working with you.
and I hope we can do it again soon. But we got to wrap up, and thank you all out there for taking this trip down the rabbit hole once again. For more of our content, including our movie reviews, visit our website, norestoftheweekendpodcast.com. Don't forget to like, rate, and subscribe on your favorite podcast channels. And now you can subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/getbehindtherabbit. Once again, I want to thank my guest, Emmeline Prior, and our sponsor, JMR Rentals. For Behind the Rabbit Productions, I'm Jason Godbey. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.